Welcome to the very first in-person meeting of the Vallecitos P3 Committee. It's actually the first time we've been in person on the dais. So welcome everyone. I'm calling the meeting to order at 10:04. Bear with us as we navigate this new technology. Director Pennick and I have not been through a meeting just yet in this way, so we may have some stumbles along the way, so please just bear with us. Do I need to read the notice to the public?
I don't believe so. Since we have no members either physically or virtually present, I think we can dispense with the reading of the notice.
Okay, all right, thank you. And how do I scroll up so I can see the rest of the agenda? Oh, great, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for being here. First item is under personnel, old business, update on Palomar College internship program.
Yeah, so you may notice that Chris Robbins is joining us virtually, and Chris is going to give an update on the Palomar College internship program. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see Chris.
Thanks, General Manager Poem. So the students need to have their letter of interest and application for the internship in by November 5th. And then Jacob's going to screen through the submissions, and then he and I are scheduled to interview candidates on November 29th. So I sent Jacob a note a little earlier today to see, like, how many have you got so far? I haven't heard back from him yet, so I don't have an update on how many he's got, but he seemed to indicate he expected a lot.
So the letter of interest has to be in by the 5th.
That's correct.
Okay. And what kind of outreach are we doing around that to try to solicit input?
So he's got postings on Palomar's site for the students, and one of my coworkers is actually taking one of the classes, and she said it was notified in her class. So let you know that it's getting done, and Palomar's got the lead on that and seem to be doing just fine.
Okay. If if time passes and we don't have that many letters of interest, is there an opportunity to partner with them and help them promote it?
Certainly, although the candidates need to come from Palomar, and I think I tried to send everybody a link to their posting, and it didn't. I believe it didn't work, and I believe it's because it's an internal to Palomar link, and I think Jacob authorized me to open up his link, but didn't authorize me to forward it to other individuals. So the candidates need to come from Palomar, and it appears that Palomar has a pretty robust internship program, even over and above what they're doing with us. It's not unheard of for them to have interns from different entities, different agencies, and they seem to be really familiar with it. They had the existing agreement contract that General Manager Purim signed, so they're pretty familiar with their process.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for that update. It's so exciting. I hope that we get a lot of good applicants. Okay, next order of business.
I brought it back up, Director Hudson.
The VWD Scholarship Program.
Yeah, we actually have an update on the bill consolidation for large customers on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Shows up
Yes,
on yours.
update on bill consolidation for large customers.
Just real quickly, we did meet with the San Alejo Hills HOA folks maybe 2 weeks ago, shared with them our progress to date. They felt that there was some additional information they wanted, and we had some questions for them. So the ball's kind of back in their court, and we're waiting to hear back from them regarding what they want the bill to look like. So it's still moving forward, still making good progress. They seem to be pleased with the progress we've made to date. But we all want to make sure that we get it headed in the right direction and not just, start wandering off in a direction that isn't satisfactory to either party. So we can continue to update the committee as that project progresses.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that work on that. I know that they've made some additional asks,
Yeah.
and I know you're trying to work through that, but thank you.
Yeah, and
for-
it's a really good group that they've put together, and they're very, very helpful, and it's always nice when the efforts that we put in are appreciated. And they have some really smart people on their team, and I think what they would actually like to see is some of the raw data, and they said that they could do some of the analysis instead of asking us to do it. So that's one of the things we're looking at, is can we provide them with just like a PDF or the data file, and then they can slice and dice the data however they want. So that's one of the things we're working on still.
Great, thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
Okay, now on to the VWD.
Yeah, and Rhonda was going to join us today and give an update, but Rhonda's feeling under the weather today, so she asked Chris to give the update. So Chris, if you can update us on the scholarship program.
Certainly. So I helped Rondi with this, so I'm pretty familiar with it. We reached out, did surveys of some of the other agencies locally, water agencies specifically, and some of them just simply promote California Special District Association's video contest. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We've promoted it as well and have had some finalists in the past. Two of the agencies in San Diego County actually have their own program. One of them is Helix. They give $1,000 each to 2 high school seniors that attend a 4-year university. And then Vista Irrigation District, our next door neighbor, does as many as 6 high school seniors that are going to attend a college or a university or a vocational school. And they have $3,000 maximum and the $1,000 minimum. And they send the checks directly to the school. They have an application form. They like to see school and community involvement, a personal statement, and some sort of essay regarding water use efficiency. That's sort of what they like to see for their candidates. Aqua has scholarships, $10,000 for one graduate, $5,000 for an undergrad, and $3,500 for 2 undergrads, and they send the funds directly to school. Students need to be majoring in water resources related fields, including engineering or agricultural or urban water supply, environmental studies, public administration, something like that. They must commit to full-time enrollments for the academic year, and theirs requires 2 letters of recommendation with at least 1 from a college professor or an employer. They also require official transcripts and an essay. And then the one I mentioned at the beginning was CASDA's Districts Makes the Difference Student Video Contest. 2,000 goes to the first place winner, 1,000 to the second place winner, 500 to the third place winner. They need to be attending or planning to attend a high school or college, and they have to have this little 60-second video that they produce on why districts make the difference. And so we can set up our program in any way we like. Some things to talk about are, should it be just high school students in all 4 public high schools in San Marcos Unified School District? Should we also ask the separate ones that aren't San Marcos Unified? What about college and university students? Do they need to be attending a college, university, junior college, or certificate or type vocational program? Would we fund tuition and or books? Would it be for just colleges, for courses in water or wastewater? How much do we want to spend? 1,000 each. How many students? Maybe 1 per high school. And then what sort of selection process do we want to have? If not an essay, then an application or what? So that's basically the briefing Rondi had prepped for us and open to discussion.
Yeah, if I may add one thing on the amount of funding, would it be a one-time, or, because sometimes these college programs are multi-year, right? So would a successful scholarship recipient be automatically eligible for subsequent years, or would they have to reapply, or are they no longer eligible? Is it a one-time only? So we'd love to get the committee members' feedback on that. And what I would suggest at the end is maybe We'll take your feedback, and then we'll come back with what we think are good guidelines for the program. And then maybe at the next board or committee meeting, the committee can agree or disagree, or we can finalize those, and then we can bring the program forward to the board for consideration. So with that, I'd love to hear the committee members' thoughts.
My own, I would say would not be subsequent. I would say you would have to reapply each year,
Okay.
depending on the funding. But I would say each year you'd have to requalify.
But they would be eligible to.
But they would be eligible. In
Okay.
fact, I would love for it to go 4 years or 2 years or whatever. But I think they would. My thing would they would have to reapply. In fact, that was one of my things, is staying in touch with the recipients is really important, because I'd love report back. What did you do this year? What did you learn? How did it help you? What did you do with it? Did you buy books, or what did you do with those scholarships?
Yeah, and that could
So
be
I-
a stipulation of the receipt, is you have to come and make a presentation,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, to the board.
Exactly, and on that, the follow-up is huge, because one, it's promoting, it's neat to hear the follow-up on what happened with that individual, and at the same time, they could reapply. But I would say, at least, and that's my opinion, is yes, they could qualify to reapply, but it would be on an annual basis instead of subsequent.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that that's a really good point. And, you know, we do want to know how it's going and what they're using it for. And it's also an opportunity for them to stay engaged with the water district. I mean, the idea is that by helping folks go to school to study water, that eventually we'll see a return on investment with more employees coming on to Vallecitos. You know, that's not the only reason, but that's a potential benefit. And I think
Yeah.
the probability of that increases if we remain in touch with them over the time.
I
So,
agree.
Yeah, so I like that idea. I think that's great.
And depending on funding, I would say, I don't know how many applicants, but I would say fewer recipients at larger amounts than a ton. I don't know, that's my own personal opinion. I'd rather give $3,000 scholarships instead of 10 $300 scholarships.
Okay.
$300 is gonna buy them a book. It'll be nice, it's a nice gift, but their incentive to come back and report, and it's not so impactful. So I'd really like to impact fewer people than not impact, quite a few. And I know it's $300 is hell, but again, that's again, a personal opinion is fewer larger scholarships than a lot of really tiny little, here you goes.
Does
Yeah.
the committee have an idea on how much total dollars? So your math would be about $9,000.
And
right?
that was just throwing it out there, but
I
I had no
understand, yeah.
idea where we at. I don't know if we have, 10,000 to provide or 5. I have no idea
Yeah.
where
I think we would
those
have to
funds are.
budget it.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we would have to budget it. We'd have to, so I think we can set the amount and then put it in the budget.
Yep.
So what do we have? We have Mission Hills, San Marcos, High Tech High, Twin Oaks
Twin
Valley
Oaks.
High.
So we think it's those 4 schools.
Four
If-
schools.
so in
Foothills
Chris-
too. Don't forget Foothills.
Yeah, that's right, yes, it's Twin Oaks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you may have heard Chris mention, are currently enrolled college students eligible for this? Or is this to encourage high school students to go to education, further their education? So those eligibility things are important.
Yeah, so you got Palomar, well, you can go to Maricopa, you can go all over, but, so and I don't know, what's you've got kids approaching college. Is it 20, I would say, I don't know what we have.
Well, I think, a question for me is, I don't know how much it costs to go to community college, and I don't know how much it costs to go to one of the state universities.
Okay.
So I think having that perspective, I mean, I know that I think what you said about $300 will buy them a book, I think that rings true. But if we can, if I knew the answer to that question, how much does it cost to go to Palomar? What's tuition? I think that would be helpful. But I do agree with you providing, a small handful, depending on how much we decide, for a few people. And maybe it doesn't have to be all or one. We could designate one for somebody who's changing careers, that wants to get into the water program at Palomar. Maybe that's an opportunity, and, those people could be any age. They could be, mid-career or something like that, just
Yeah.
to provide, some
Right.
opportunity. But I think that the strong opinions that I have are that it's not only limited to a four-year institution, that we have to also be able to provide the money for a two-year.
Junior college or something?
Yeah. So I do feel very strongly about that. I don't have a strong opinion about whether or not we only go toward high school seniors or only go toward existing students, but I think having a mix would be interesting to provide opportunity for different types of learners, because not everybody follows that straight path from, high school then to two-year or then four-year. Some people, we want to enable them to have an opportunity too. Your point about awarding smaller amounts, we have to remember somebody's going to have to be on the receiving end of all of these applications and reviewing them, and that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. So there's also kind of a benefit, an economic benefit for staff as well, and I guess that's something that we need to think about if we're going to be on that committee, or the next people that are on the P3 committee, or who's the reviewing body, because that'll take time. So having 3 scholarships that we hand out for money that makes a difference, and I don't know what that is exactly, I don't know what that amount is, but we can figure that out, rather than 10 scholarships. I like that idea. I think you make a great point there, and I'm also thinking about it from a staff perspective, that it'll save time if they don't have to review so many applications.
And staff can certainly do some work and come back at the next committee meeting and give you an idea of what a year at Palomar costs, what a year at Cal State costs, or other state school. Just so you have a general idea, is $3,000 a reasonable number? Or maybe it's more than they need at Palomar, but it's not enough to go to Cal State. But it'll help, I think, maybe help the committee reach a decision about what's the right amount of money.
And I don't think they have to be the same amounts, because
No.
it should be money that helps make a difference to that person's education. And,
Right.
it probably will be less for somebody that's going to Palomar, because I don't think it's as expensive.
Yeah.
I would also like for, so yes, if staff could just find out generally that information. But I think what would also be great is if we had a list of questions that we need to answer and sort of hash out. And I was trying to sort of think about it as, as Chris was naming them, and I know Director Hernandez wants to be involved, but we, and he'll have the opportunity to do that as well. But having a list of questions that we need to answer so that we can look at it and make sure that we're covering off on all the bases, and then put, a skeletal structure in place based on what we know, then we can sort of arrive at a consensus about what we would like to do. And then, like you said, General Manager, bring it to the full board. And
Okay.
if Director Hernandez has, objections to something, then that'll be the time
Right.
that he can provide input, and we
Okay.
can arrive at a consensus.
So this list of questions would be to help guide the policy, right? So we'll throw a bunch of things out there, we'll get the answers from the board, you're saying from the committee members, and that would help guide the policy.
Yeah, so we can do it systematically. I mean, Chris just rattled off a lot of questions, and I know we have opinions about some of them, but I know that I didn't track all of the questions that he needs answers to.
Yeah, what
so.
we can do is we can develop that list, staff will develop the
Okay,
list, maybe
thank
send it to the committee members before the next committee meeting, so you have some time to think about it, maybe come prepared with your either answers or follow-up or clarifying questions that you may have, with the hopes that by the end of that meeting, we have all those answers, all those questions answered. And then hopefully that'll be good enough guidance for staff to develop a policy, which will then be taken to the board. And regarding the dollar amount, similar, remember that the committee doesn't get to decide on the amount. You make a recommendation. So you may say, we think $3,000 scholarships is the right amount, and then the board gets to decide whether that's the right amount.
One part of that could be maybe on the applicant. They could, part of their questions could be, what's your financial needs?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, if they say, I'm going to Palomar College, if I had $1,000, that would be great. That
Right.
would help us. And somebody else is going to Cal State San Marcos, boy, if I'm going to Cal State and I'm from out of town, I would love, $3,000 because I've got some housing and things. So maybe it would also incentivize the applicant to actually look at their financial needs analysis and figure out the cost of attending college. They might not do that, parents might help out so much, but
Right.
by them actually thinking about it and saying, hey, I'm going to present something, I'm going to write some questions and present a request for scholarship money, And I would, if I write down all my food, housing, books, tuition, everything like that, that might be part of the applicant process, just to request a certain scholarship amount. Not that we'd always, grant that amount, but it would give us an idea, difference between 1,000 and 3,000 or whatever it may be.
Almost like a grant writing process.
Yeah.
When you have to write a grant.
Almost,
and
but
you
it
have to-
actually makes them think about the cost of going to college.
And I think in subsequent years, we would want to budget for it. We would have enough money in the current year if the board wanted to consider something before the next budget year. So if in, say, the first half of the next calendar year, which is in this year's fiscal budget, we could probably make the decisions and still have enough funding and then budget for subsequent years in a routine budgetary process.
Great, okay, so then that means that we could potentially award a scholarship for someone starting in the fall,
Right.
right? Okay,
Yeah, we may not want to wait till next year's budget because the prospective students may want to be thinking over the summer. So it'd be nice if we get some certainty on the scholarship program within this calendar year, within this fiscal year, which would extend to June 30th. And one of the questions I didn't hear Chris say, but I know we had talked about it behind the scenes, is this on a reimbursement basis? So Vallecitos has a tuition reimbursement program for our employees. They get reimbursed upon successful completion with a certain GPA or higher. So if they go halfway through the year and drop out, they don't get any of their money back. I would suggest something similar, but we could put that on our list of questions that we're looking for feedback from the committee members. Because the last thing we want to do is fund a program that doesn't get completed. But it's tough because they may need the money upfront to even get into the school, so that's something we would need some direction on.
yeah, okay, I think let's think about that and,
Yeah, we'll put it on the list of things that we need
Thank you.
direction on. And again, your feedback will be a recommendation to the board.
Sure.
I'm sure they'll strongly listen to your recommendation, but,
okay,
okay, so I think we can get done by the next committee meeting what we're talking about, some estimate of costs and a list of questions that we need direction from the committee on.
thank you.
All right.
Okay, new business, drought declaration.
Yeah, so this is a quick item, and Chris, feel free to stay on here. The committee members may remember that, I think it was last Monday, we issued the level 1 drought declaration. So that's just kind of sending that strong message to our customers that the water supply conditions are tough, and they need to really start thinking about how much water they use and how they use the water. We will be, I think in the second meeting in November, coming forward to the board, adopting our new drought ordinance, which will have different drought levels, but the level 1 in the new one is almost identical to the level 1 in the current program. So there's no change there. So I made the declaration at level 1. Our current ordinance authorizes that the general manager can make the level 1 drought declaration. Anything beyond level 1 is going to be up to the board. We may involve the committee as water supply conditions change. If we think it's worsening, if the timing works out well, we may go through the policy committee and say, do you think it's time? Conditions may worsen so quickly that we don't think we want to wait to go through a policy committee, right? We may want to take it right to the board and see if the board wants to go level 2 through level 6. And those would be progressive. We wouldn't go from 1 to 5. We'd probably go 1 to 2 to 3, and we'd move through those things. We're clearly hopeful that the atmospheric river that moved through Northern California is going to help alleviate the need to go to subsequent ones, but if that was a one and done, that's not going to be enough to get us through the water year, but it's off to a good start, so we'll put it that way. So I just want to let the committee know that maybe clarify the action that we took, why I took the action, why it was under the general manager's authority, and maybe where we're going. So Chris, do you have anything to add? Am I right that we're targeting November 17th for the drought ordinance?
Yes, that's correct. And these are two new board members. So Vallecitos, in both the existing ordinance and the new one we want to bring forward, we have a rather long laundry list of permanent water waste restrictions, things you can't do anytime. It's just never okay. It's never okay to irrigate right after it rained. It's never okay to have water running off your property when you're irrigating. Restaurants are always supposed to check that you want the water, that they're not supposed to just hand you a glass of water if you didn't ask for it, that type of thing. So, just so that you're both aware, we do have permanent water restrictions in place at all times.
And so as we move through the different levels, presuming that we will at some point, what is our plan to roll that out to our customers? How do we make them aware and make it easy for them to understand and follow so that they can participate and cut their water accordingly?
Yes,
So-
go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry. So some of the tools that we've used in the past is we've actually had some banners that the city of San Marcos allowed us to put out within the community. We would put it out within our newsletter, Between the Pipes, would be on our website. We would have a press release. It seemed to me that when you go to those level 2 and higher drought restrictions, the newspapers actually pick up on that, and so do the television stations. And I myself was on television a couple times during the last drought. And then additionally, we would probably, if we're going to go to drought with actual restrictions, we would probably have a snipe on the bill itself, which is a printing on the exterior of the envelope to let customers know that we are implementing more stringent drought restrictions.
And we use social media pretty heavily too, so we.
Oh,
can-
yes, always, but not everybody gets that, so you're just trying to get different methods to get the message out.
So on that snipe on the bill, for those that are on electronic bill, is there something that you could also do electronically? When
Yeah, they get a PDF. The tricky part is making sure they read it, but
But it wouldn't be on the actual email, it would be on the PDF. Gotcha, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so no action required, just an informational update for the committee.
Okay. Okay, policy, old business, single-use plastics resolution. So we know that the city of San Marcos passed a limited single-use plastics resolution. And what I would like to get from the committee today is, you know, as I've been thinking about this and I've read the single-use plastics resolution passed by the city, or the ordinance passed by the city, it's very long and it doesn't all apply to Vallecitos, but the idea here is that we would pass, that we would write a resolution and pass it that is supportive generally of a reduction in single-use plastics. But I also wanted to think about, you know, are there things that we could do here at Vallecitos that could be culture changing and moving toward a on-site limited use plastics type of document. So I wanted to find out kind of what the appetite is for that. Is it needed? You know, what are some of the things that we could do that we could include specifically in the resolution to try to be both supportive of a reduction in single-use plastics, but also try to implement, try to walk the walk a little bit here.
Right. Okay, so we, a couple of years ago, I think it was Director Hernandez had made a recommendation that we eliminate like single-use plastic bottles. So we started buying boxed water. A lot of those expired and during COVID, right, we didn't go through them a lot, so we're in the process of reacquiring those. We didn't adopt an internal policy that talked about eliminating or even reducing single-use plastics. It was more of a practice than a policy. So we were eliminating the use of those types of things. But if the committee and the board wants us to develop something a little bit more formal, we can do that. We can certainly look at our purchasing policy, which is how we initially procure a lot of these items, and say, hey, whenever you're purchasing an item, you shall look for materials, items that don't utilize single-use plastics. The only one that jumps to mind is the water bottles that we buy, but I'm sure there's other things that we buy. We have kitchenettes throughout the building, and we have plastic forks there, right? Disposable plastic forks. So that type of stuff, that if you want to walk the talk, right, we're going to make sure that we are doing what we can within our organization to minimize the use of single-use plastics. We can do that. We can cast a net wide enough that we know through our purchasing policy that we're not buying those types of things. Now, remember, most of the alternatives are more expensive, so just want the board, or the committee, and ultimately the board to understand that there will be increased in costs. Regarding the single-use plastic bottles, what we decided to do is, for the use in the building, we discontinued single-use plastic bottles. We went to this kind of cardboard solution, but we did still buy pallets of single-use bottles for distribution in the field during an event of like a water main break. So if there's a water main break that shuts off water to, say, a cul-de-sac, we would often drop off pallets of water so that families can come out and grab some water, so at least they have something to drink. That's where the cost really hit us. We said, boy, to do that is boxed water. I think the boxed water is like 4 to 5 times as expensive. So we said, as a start, let's go with just the smaller amount. The stuff we use in the building will be the cardboard alternative. But if the board wanted, or the committee wanted to make a recommendation to expand that prohibition against buying that, we could do that, and we can come back with a cost estimate. We actually did that, and I think it was, I want to say 3 years ago, we came back to the board and said, here's what it would cost to switch that, and the board at the time said, well, let's just start with the internal use, not what we deliver to the customers. So we have looked at these things in the past, but certainly can look at going a little bit broader and deeper.
Okay, I wouldn't mind seeing those numbers, and I think, I think that we can do good. We may not be able to do everything, but we can do good and, continue to reduce our single-use plastics use. And it might also be something that, when we encourage, if employees are bringing their lunches, maybe just try to eliminate waste. I don't know. There are so many alternatives out there now where you don't have to pack your lunch in a Ziploc. You can, pack it in something else. But why don't we do this? If for the next meeting, if we could have those numbers of what it would cost to do something like replacing the single-use plastics with the boxed water, also bearing in mind that it does expire.
Right.
So that is, we never know when there's going to be a water main break. But if we had that boxed water do we keep it on hand or do we buy it as needed?
No, we have a supply on hand, and we keep a small supply right in this room back here for like the
Okay.
board's use during meetings, like the boxed water. But in the warehouse is where we'll have the bigger pallets of things, that if there's a water main break, then our crews can come into the warehouse, grab some pallets, take it out to the site of the water main break, for example.
How,
Both expire, right? Even whether it's plastic bottled water or boxed water, they both have an expiration date, which we have to monitor.
okay. I don't know what the difference between those, I don't know how long water lasts in plastic bottles versus the
Yeah.
boxed water. That might be something good to know too.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a difference, but we can look into that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if there is a difference, then or if there's not a difference, then it just becomes an issue of the difference in the cost,
Right.
whether or not there's appetite to do that. But if for the next meeting, we could have just a little bit of data around that piece, and also thinking about the processes here at Vallecitos that do involve single-use plastics and where we might be able to save. That way we can have a brainstorm about, what are we willing to try to cut back on, what the cost implications would be there. I think we're in agreement, and I don't anticipate that the board would disagree, that we are in agreement that we should reduce single-use plastics generally for the sake of water and the environment. But the devil is always in the details, so having an idea of what those details could be so that they can inform the resolution is helpful. And I know that it's been a practice for a while, but I think, we have the opportunity to put it in writing and make some progress.
Right. Yeah, Director Boyd Hodgson, one thing I think I heard you say is that we may want to try to inhibit the employee's ability to bring in single-use plastics, and I would put that in the second tier, but all the stuff that we provide for them. So the forks, knives, spoons, that stuff, plastic cups, plastic water bottles, the stuff that we can control, that'd be the first phase. We would just do all that. I don't want to get into the employee issues of you can't control what I bring my sandwich in.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Yes, because I'm sure there were people that would say, you're stepping on my freedom, you
Right.
can't tell me what to bring. I totally understand that, but if we have a culture that favors trying to reduce single-use plastics, then it might encourage people
I think it would.
to think more carefully about
Yeah.
it.
Agreed. I mean, I haven't seen the city's ordinance, but I would say, I'd look at that, but I don't know if we have to make our own or just adopt the one that's already been in place.
Well, I think it's quite lengthy, and it is more geared toward sort of city goings-on, and it's also the case that, we,
City, like internal city or
It's-
the residents?
yeah, yes, so, the
'Cause I
city
haven't-
interworkings, yeah, it's quite lengthy.
Is it? Yeah.
I can forward it to you.
That's probably why I haven't read it.
Yeah.
I need the
can
Cliff
forward it
Note
to you.
version.
But and, theirs is an ordinance, and we can't, of course, pass ordinances that expand outside of, what we do here internally. So that's why I had proposed a resolution, because it's,
Yeah.
it's saying, yes, we support this generally, and here are some of the things that we could do here. Now, if we're going to, suggest that we go through, different purchasing processes, then maybe that rises to the level of a policy that's internal to Vallecitos. So I think that's maybe a discussion to have too.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I do is I think we're doing great. I think they've already kind of addressed it and are doing what they can.
Director Pennick, for example, one of the things that the city does is they try to control the stores that operate within the city and their ability to sell or dispense single-use plastics. We don't have those kind of powers, right?
Right.
We can support the city, hey, do what you want, but we can't do that. We can't tell Vons that they can't sell plasticware.
Right, so I was just wondering, I don't know what the city again passed, but does it affect how we have to change anything that we're doing because we live within the city boundary? Are we,
I don't
think
business
so.
is
I didn't
within
see
the city
anything,
boundaries?
no, I didn't see anything in the city ordinance that would affect us directly,
Right, that's what I was, okay.
so.
That's good,
Yeah, it is good, yeah, so we don't have to worry about potentially competing
Right.
directives.
because, yeah. Okay, no, and I think you guys have shown in the past, yeah, we're doing great. As a
Yeah.
water agency, yes, we're of course into,
Yeah,
trying to keep the environment.
one of the things that came up at a previous meeting is, should we adopt something that says we can't buy any plastic at all? And we said, well, a lot of our pipes are made out of plastic, so we got to be careful when we make broad statements. That certainly is not the board or the committee's intent to say you can't buy PVC pipe anymore, we need to do that, but those
Right.
single-use disposable is the key thing.
Right.
And I think we can do something that would address that. So at the next meeting, we'll come back with maybe a list of the top single-use plastics that we have, with maybe some kind of a general cost comparison of what we can find. What does a compostable box of forks cost compared to a box of plastic forks? And same thing with the water comparison, and maybe an estimate of how many pallets of water do we use, so we can come up with at the end of the day, I think what you want to see is, what are the annual cost impacts of doing something like this, right? You don't care if one fork costs a penny more than another, but how many forks did we buy? So is it $10 or $1,000 a year that we're talking about? And these numbers aren't huge, right? Which is the good thing, I think. So even if we switch completely to compostable utensils, we're talking maybe $1,000, $2,000, not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
Unless you have lessons on how to use chopsticks as well.
There you go.
That could get costly.
Everyone bring in their own BYOC, yeah, bring your own chopsticks to work. Not disposable chopsticks,
That's,
right.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we'll put it on the agenda next time, and we'll have some information for the committee's consideration. If for some reason the compilation of the data takes longer, we'll let you know when we're
Sure.
putting the agenda together.
Sure. And I'll send you the ordinance that.
Yeah,
the
well,
city
I
has.
that'd be some nice
Yeah.
reading for me.
It might actually be on the website, I haven't checked, but either,
I was
I'll
gonna
send you a link.
give a
or
little
I'll-
note here, yeah.
I'll send you the
Yeah.
ordinance. Okay, anything else, any other comments? Did we miss anything?
No, I think we have it all.
Just thank you to Jonathan. It seems like everything's going through well.
Yeah, so
Easy?
far,
Thank you.
little tweaks I can see that I need to take a
Oh,
look at.
are you?
but
Yeah.
overall,
But-
Chris just gave us a big thumbs up, so he can hear and see us and all of that.
So from your perspective, Chris, this worked out well for, like, say, a member of the public, if they're just kind of listening in?
Well, just so you understand, you are just kind of these disembodied voices way far away. And I'm looking at the agenda, which is fine, but I'm not seeing close-ups of anybody.
Okay, so that's good feedback, I think, because,
Right.
you know, if we are having a meeting and someone is sharing their screen during the presentation, then it's gonna be difficult to know, like, who moved and who seconded, or who is making the comment.
It's tough, and just to Chris's point, if you look at your screen right now, that's what the public sees. In the Zoom environment, when you're all operating from your home, they saw a close-up of your face. Now you're just one of 5 on this wide screen, and no one can see your mouth move, they don't know who's talking, particularly if you're wearing masks. So it's not the same level of experience, I don't think, from the person watching at home, but one thing we've talked about before is maybe adding a couple of cameras at the back of the room, which may or may not be able to be done within the current budget. So if the board ultimately wanted to continue to do a kind of this hybrid thing, where people can continue to either view or even participate remotely, we may want to add some cameras. And Jonathan, I know we've talked about some costs, and the good thing is the room was pre-wired. When we did their last boardroom upgrades, they ran the wiring to add 2 more cameras in the back, and that's usually the big expense, is tearing everything up and rewiring it. So now just buying the camera, installing it, and doing some programming to make sure the cameras follow the speaker.
Yeah, there's a little bit of you can either get cameras that I think focus on certain sides of the dais, and I'm not sure if you can program it to tell which microphone is getting the audio. In a lot of cases, you have to allow yourself to talk, turn it off when you're done talking, so that the camera can focus in on that microphone that is turned on. So in your situation right now, you're in like kind of a discussion mode where both are on, and in a lot of the cases, the entire dais is turned on. So it might have to go to a situation where you have to allow yourself to talk by hitting the little button there on the microphone and then turning yourself off. And then it goes back to a widescreen, and then if somebody hits the button to talk again, it kind of zooms in on that person. But if it's all open, then it's just a wide shot.
And this camera cannot manually be zoomed or anything.
It can, but it's not clean.
It's not clean,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not clean. We do have a discussion, we were gonna kind of talk about this a little bit near the end, is the way that these work, all right? So you guys can vote from them, you can ask to speak, they can be put in what is it called, like a request to speak mode. So the chairman would have the ability to choose who speaks, right? So you'd hit your button, instead of it being a red light on the back, it would be a green light, and then the chairman could see who's in what queue to be able to speak or wants to be able to speak, and they can tap on it, it would activate the microphone, and that person can speak.
And Chair Boyd Hodgson, maybe can I make a recommendation? We terminate the P3, and then we can
Sure.
maybe talk a little bit more about
That
the
sounds great.
functionality. So,
Okay, all right, so I will, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your work.
Thank
All
you,
right.
thank you, Chris.